happens, then it will crossfade you home to the now, whatever the now happens to be.
Just then. All right, we should be live. Yes, we are. Excellent. Great. Well, then welcome back, everybody. I don't think we did not lose anyone, and we didn't gain anyone. Awesome. That's yes. That's the way it should be. All right. So, given all of that, we had some questions. There was a brief question about how to create one's own location if it's not already in the viewing locations that you have. If you go to view from, and then either latitude, longitude, or zip and postal code. If you're in the US, make sure to click on the US. You can name a selected location and then view from the selected location, so that location becomes one that you are able to utilize as your home base, which is great if you're, Downingtown is like 40 miles from Philly. So Philly's good enough. But if I really wanted to be precise, that's how we would go on ahead and look at that. All right. So since I've been talking for a while and I have a co-host, I'm going to let Eric take over a little bit. So we've kind of done the big kind of getting everybody where they need to be, refreshed from Starry Night, and we've been able to jump around and change our times and dates and get to Stonehenge. So Eric, what would you like to discuss next?
Well, first I'd like to discuss restarting my RenderBox side because it crashed while I was in the breakout room. And then maybe I can do another screen share.
Excellent.
And when you're going through the quit process of Preview Suite, until you quit out of ATM4, it's not going to show you your desktop icons. That's just the way that works because of the Screen Manager tool. And let's start that again.
All right. So, real quick, just because we've had it brought up enough where it's worth reiterating, preferences, options, the way that we can save things. Of course, the big, if you always want things to be exactly the way that you want them, you've changed all of the options here in display to look exactly the way you like, and you want to come back to it over and over again. Of course, we make our favorites. So that was, of course, something that we went over in the very basics of Starry Night. Always good to just kind of get exactly where it is that, make sure we're all up on the same page. In this case, I'm just going to very quickly set up a nighttime with, let's see, the ecliptic and some grids and some poles and a bunch of stuff that I know I do not want on all the time. Well, that is abhorrent. That is so terrible looking. But you get the point. There's a bunch of stuff there that I may or may not want up on the screen all the time. But if I do want to come back to this exact view, what is the easiest thing for me to do? And I forgot that you guys can just talk, so.
Save it as a favorite?
Yeah, we're going to save it as favorite. Absolutely. So now that I've got my chat, I can see all of you. So, of course, when we want to save as favorite, whoa. Where'd the favorites go? We want to add a favorite. For a second, I was like, where did everything move to? In this case, most of you are going to have app favorites, user favorites, and under user favorites, you're going to see the big drop-down menu for Full Dome Curriculum. You want to keep those there so that the favorite's in the right place, so that if you run the scripts for ATM4 for the Full Dome Curriculum, they will run correctly. So I'm going to create a new folder under user favorites. So I've clicked on the user favorites in the favorites bar. I go to the favorites menu, add favorite folder or Control Shift N, whichever you want. In this case, it's going to be Starry Night, Beyond the Basics.
And this is a new feature, by the way.
So now, as it refreshed, I now have Starry Night BTB, and there's a little triangle, which I'm anticipating something will be in there. Nothing is in there. It's playing with you. But if you are clicked on that folder, back to favorites, add favorite, now it's going to put that in my user folder, exactly the way that I want it to be. So in this case, it's going to be too many lines. Click OK.
Yeah. Previously, when you saved a Starry Night user favorite, you had to have previously clicked to select the user favorites subfolder that you wanted it to go into. And there was a certain amount of uncertainty associated with that. And we've added this new feature where when you want to save a user favorite, you can specify which folder you want it to go into right up front. And so first off, adding user favorites folders, you've been able to do that for some time. But being able to specify which user favorite subfolder you want it to go into at sort of the point of sale, that's new.
Yeah. So this makes your life easier. And so in my Beyond the Basics, I now have too many lines. And the way to show that that's working correctly is to simply go home. And then if I click on too many lines, we should theoretically get everything to work exactly the way it was supposed to. I click on it, and there you go. So I haven't changed any preferences. I can get rid of all of these colors and lines as quickly as I want by clicking on the favorite. Now I've set it. That's easy. That's pretty straightforward. That's the basics of working with favorites in Starry Night. Now, of course, if things get a little bit crazier and you want to get rid of, I'm going to get rid of just all sorts of things. I'm going to get rid of stars, but I'm going to put on the Milky Way because why not? Let's make it really.
One wonders why you haven't already got it.
Just as this is terribly bright. I can save that favorite, which is not what we want to do. Usually, of course, if you press Control S over anything, what happens to the original favorite? Yeah, it's going to get overwritten, so you don't have anything anymore. So what we can do here is just simply is the key is we can add that favorite, and this would be too many lines too. Now I've got my two separate ones. So I have my too many lines, and I have my too many lines too. But let's say, oh, go ahead, Eric.
No, I just accidentally responded to somebody else when someone was asking a general question.
These things happen.
My time is showing up incorrectly in pre-flight instead of render box, and that maybe one or two people have that problem. And I'm curious if this is just after having set up your default, your home location, whether you live in Downingtown or someplace else.
It's a good question. I've had that issue on my pre-flight before, and as terrible advice as this is, it was really like a restart, and it just worked.
I hadn't noticed that, but I figured
it's a feature. The feature.
Yeah, the solution that I found was that if you wanted to set up your home location using your zip code, as Americans do for some reason sometimes, when you use that zip code feature, it will specify the location fine. However, the zip code information doesn't include what time zone you live in. And that may not be specified correctly unless you tab over to look at the specification of your time zone, and you do that.
Okay. Starry Night, incredible. So then if I'm looking at Starry, too many lines too, and I really like what I see, and I'm just going to add some light pollution in a meteor shower, and I'm going to add my horizon back, but I want to keep this favorite as is. Then simply it's clicking Control S, or in this case, save favorite. And it's going to ask you, do you want to make a new favorite? In this case, you can replace the favorite, which is Starry Night's way of saying overwrite. Click that, and now all of your hard work is still there, but now you've made sure that the favorites work the way that you want them to work. So you can either save as a new copy or save over, and that means that if you have and this is really where we start moving beyond the basics, is sort of how you're thinking about these favorites. Having a baseline of favorites that you can utilize, and then just name them with something new as you add or subtract, is honestly the way to go. If, say, you're building a star show, is come up with your baseline constellations or your baseline circumpolar, or how you like certain things to look for planets, and then just tweak from that base so that you can have a very consistent show that does everything that you want to do over the course of the whole year, because 95% of what you need to do in that favorite is already done. So you're only tweaking the 5% that's, this is a new asterism, this is a new constellation, this is facing in a new direction, but everything else is exactly the same. So think about your favorites not just as snapshots, but as building blocks. They really can make a difference. If you find something that works and you like how it looks, make a favorite, file it away into a folder that's, I like how it looks, and you can come back to it over and over again and not have to worry about trying to recreate or reinvent something. So use those favorites for more than just show building. Use them as a foundation for all sorts of your presentations. All right, Eric, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Okay, I have Preview Suite running as well. I think I have a lower resolution than you do.
All right, I'm going to stop my share so that you can share your pre-flight. And yes, you should be able to share screen. So Eric, go ahead.
Okay. So sharing my pre-flight screen. All right. And I haven't made certain modifications that that Mike already has. So I'm going to go into planets and moons, and I'm going to turn off the lens flare of the sun. Oh dear. Doesn't go away that way. In fact, I can't seem to click out of it.
We've been finding that's an issue with Zoom.
Oh dear. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing for just a second. And go back in here. Now it works. Okay. Well, I wonder what this is going to mean for future screen sharing adventures. Also, I think I'm going to tighten this up a little bit and get some of my, I'm going to run a few fewer operations while I'm doing this, because that might be causing a problem. I had various documents open, not too many of them, but the training agenda and also other paperwork. We, I think, have distributed some documents relating to these lessons as part of the Prep for Institute, and I'm curious if you have these ones. The first one in this section is viewing options for individual bodies. You could go and do that.
Yeah, the course notes for this particular stream of classes, stream of sessions, is going to go up tomorrow. So if you are able to get the Dropbox, that's where we'll do it. So then in that case, then I'll just jump back in, Eric, and go for the viewing options. So show of digital hands. How many of you are familiar with sort of the viewing options of all of sort of the subset, you know, the alt as and the local views? How many of you are familiar with those viewing options? Okay. So Maggie, okay, so a few. It's a few. But not a ton. Okay. We'll go in enough detail where this will make sense enough. So let me go ahead and share once again. So the viewing options are really where you get to create uh, a preview suite, or if you're in your dome, this is where you get to create the things that look exactly the way that you want to. And there are certain best practices for really understanding all of the different aspects of this level of Starry Night. Cool. Refresher it is. We're going for it. So in your display options pane, you'll notice, of course, that there are lots and lots of options for us to choose from. And we won't have to go through all of them. Your options for other objects, don't worry about it. Really, if you got the first few things down, then everything else starts to make sense because you'll see those same parameters over and over again. So with your major guides, that's going to be the first ones up here. The ones you're going to use most often are your Alt-Az, your Celestial, and your Ecliptic guides. Of course, anytime that you're going to be working with um, coordinate systems or grids, this is where you're going to want to begin. If you don't like Arial, then go on ahead and change the font. I'm not going to do it right now, but I don't like Arial, and I would change it right away if I've given the chance. But of course, any font style, any size, and importantly, any color. So since these guides do not show up well in the daytime, we're simply going to find ourselves in the evening. Easiest way for you to switch between day and night, other than turning off daylight entirely, is to click on PM. It says 322. If you click on PM, it just changes it to AM, and now it's nighttime. So we can see all of the different grids that we're going to put up. You'll notice, of course, there is an equator line. If you do not have a panorama, say you are working without a panorama, or this was a very, very clean online stream, you could have a line that indicates the horizon and nothing else. It's up to you whether or not you'd like to use that. You have your Alt-Az grid, which of course is centered on the zenith. And this is going to give you azimuth and altitude. We can put on our meridian and our poles as well. In this case, you're going to have your pole at the zenith because, again, it is an alt-azimuth grid. But like the guides below you, when you go and click on the guides at the top, so Alt-Az guides turns blue, you'll notice that there's a little slider bar to the right of it. If you don't see it, you can always kind of expand that a little bit, expand the panel, and you may be able to pop it into view. This is your opacity. If you would think of this like Photoshop, put it in the middle, and you're going to see that it's about 50%. Put it at the bottom, and you have 0. This is the very quick and dirty way of getting transparency or opacity in any of the guides. If you click on the guides themselves, now you have a few more options. You can put an indicator for the zenith. And so you'll see that I have a little zenith that popped up at 90 degrees. If you don't like a gray guide and you want this to be vibrantly yellow, you can make the meridian vibrantly yellow. You can make the background grid just as yellow. Really, really bright. If you want to overwhelm your audiences, give them a fine grid. If you want to go
to overwhelm the audiences.
No.
Although
a pretty cool view of the cupola.
Oh yeah, using the meridian is kind of the climax of a show that I've usually done when I'm doing training at a planetarium. We want to help everyone to build a demo that uses Starry Night at ATM4, and now we're in the holodeck.
Exactly. So go crazy.
And the demo that I often do is the sun in different seasons and showing the analemma and showing the meridian. And the meridian has graduations on it so that you can have whoever is in the room, if they can see the graduation numbers, then they can read off 2 times the range of the Earth's axial tilt, which is 23.5 degrees to one side or to the other, and find out the sun altitude.
So you have control over all of that. And remember, what you see in pre-flight is not what you're going to see on your dome. It's not even what you see on your render box. You have to commit to those changes first for it to show on the preview. And you'll notice that, of course, that the lines look a little thicker in your preview window than they would on your render box window elsewhere. So kind of keep that in mind if you're doing something online. But again, all of those different thickness and how coarse or fine you want that grid to be, you can do that. You can, of course, change the font on the label. And there's your alt as guides. Same thing with the celestial ones. It's going to give you much the same, many of the same options, except now this is going to, of course, be based on the Earth's tilt and on right ascension and declination. So there's your celestial equator and your meridian. You can put the north and south poles. Like, you can really go crazy with this. And by the time you know it, if you're a cartographer or you're somebody who really wants your audiences to do math, you could have them figure out sort of, give them 2 clocks and the movement of something on the celestial sphere and have them figure out time, sort of the old way of doing it. But this is also if you want to simply teach about circumpolar constellations, you could find your circumpolar boundary. And as you change your latitude, the circumpolar region will get bigger or smaller. Again, it's a tool that you can utilize. That's how in the full dome curriculum, you see Dr. Bradstreet shows it getting bigger and getting smaller depending on your latitude. It's that regional boundary. You can, of course, select all of the colors. Again, grid size, pretty simple stuff. All of that available to you so that you can have it look the way you want. And then, of course, you have your ecliptic guides. The main guide, of course, is the ecliptic itself. It's going to showcase the location of the sun along that ecliptic line. And then you can do an ecliptic grid if you're really...
No, nobody is.
Like, if you're really into that, going
No.
ahead.
No, they're not.
And then one of the more powerful tools is if you were to move away from the Earth. So in this case, I'm going to leave the Earth and fly several thousand kilometers above the planet. And if I turn my view towards the sun, you'll notice I have an Earth near the center and a green line pointing directly at the sun. So if you wanted to showcase the Earth and sun line of sight throughout the year, this is where you would turn that on. So this is let's trace the sun through the ecliptic constellations over the course of a year. You'll find that in the full dome curriculum. This is how you can utilize it yourself if you'd like to use it for something different than just I'm moving through the constellations. It showcases how precisely the sun is staying on the ecliptic, because there is no difference between the sun's path and the ecliptic. They are one and the same. The line of sight helps you to focus on that.
And I think that's a new feature. Also, Scott Taylor's got his hand up.
Oh, Scott, you had your hand up from earlier. So,
oh, okay.
Thanks for that. So that's your ecliptic. And then you can go crazy too with things like the galactic guides. If you need that, you need that. So
yeah,
until then,
probably nobody does.
You don't need it. I can't even close it right now. There it is. Great.
If you do want to have guidelines up on the dome, the meridian could be important. If you're teaching second graders what the meaning of AM and PM is, it means anti-meridian and post-meridian. The ecliptic is pretty useful because the ecliptic and the zodiac are one and the same. And that's the plane in which all the planets and the sun rotate. And the celestial equator is kind of important because it is straight overhead from the Earth's equator. But when I'm putting together short videos about astronomical subjects, I'll usually have those things on. But as to the grid, it depends on what it's for. Knowing your alt-azimuth coordinates for what you're looking at might be useful depending on what kind of a telescope you have. When I'm star hopping using a Dobsonian telescope, the alt-azimuth grid is not going to give me absolute coordinates of where something is. However, it is a good judge of what is directly above something else and what is directly to the left or right of something else. And so I use alt-azimuth grids if I'm doing a little star hopping with an alt-azimuth telescope. If the telescope is going to be on an equatorial mount, everything is tilted up by 23.5 degrees or so, depending on what your latitude is. Actually, 45 degrees, because that's our distance roughly from the equator. And those right ascension and declination coordinates, the celestial coordinates, they are the system that's used to find things on the sky. And if you're watching comet Neowise setting, and I'd actually just like to try screen capture again. I'm going to set this up, see if I have any greater control over it than I did before.
Can you share?
Yes, please.
All right. Go for it.
All right. Let's see if we can do this now. Okay, I can turn on a label and I can center Comet Neowise on the dome. Just so happens I want to advance time to a little later in the evening. And for guides, I haven't actually done this yet, but I'm going to turn on the meridian. And I'm going to turn on the celestial equator. And I'm going to turn on the ecliptic. And the view right now is centered on the comet. It's not centered it on the top of the dome, but it has centered it on like that. It's centered it on the azimuth that we're looking at. And if we change our magnification with here to, let's say, 30 degrees. Other thing here is that because Neowise is added into Starry Night as a custom object, it is most likely going to be automatically hidden unless we automatically show it. So there we go. Uncheck that. There's the comet. If I was to turn on the alt-azimuth grid, then this is going to give us some idea of where the comet is going to be. And I'm going to step in using the step of days. You can see the comet is moving to the left and upwards in the evening sky, and also getting a little bit dimmer. But if we were to turn off our alt-azimuth grid and turn on the celestial grid, different color, and then we step through the night until the comet comes back up again in the pre-dawn. And pre-dawn is not that great anymore to be looking for the comet because the time that we're looking at right now is 8:30 a.m., so the sun's already up. We can turn on daylight and show that. The keystroke that I'm using right now is Shift H or H. H will step time forward in steps of an hour, and Shift H will reverse it in steps of 1 hour. Just like if we step back several days, then we can look at Comet Neowise when it was more visible in the eastern sky before sunrise. But as the days have gone, if we turn on a path behind the comet, let's turn on a celestial path behind the comet. in those 1 day steps, the comet is moving further to the west, and it's mostly exited the evening sky, the morning sky, and it's come into just the evening sky. I'm going to turn that path off. And I'm going to move backwards into the when it's in the evening sky. If we turn on its local path, this is a different color. And it's not measuring the comet's position with respect to the fixed stars. It's measuring it with respect to our compass points and how high above the horizon it is. So when we look at it in intervals of 1 day, it's kind of different. Let's go back to the start. And if we turn on both, you can perceive the difference. So the yellow dots are celestial and the green dots are local. And this is one of those high magnification views that we were talking about earlier. When the altitude right now that we're looking at is 13 degrees above the horizon. But if we were to zoom out and look at a whole planetarium field of view, you can't really see that much detail. And this is just a simulation of what it would look like up on the dome. I'm going to go into live mode so that I can see the same stuff up there.
Hence why doing a
Right.
show like this, people are like, I can't see the comet. It's way too low to the ground. And then they actually see it in the sky, and it's like, okay, it's 10 degrees. That's enough. We can make that work.
Thank you. All
Absolutely.
right. I wanted to make sure that my screen share was working.
And did it ever. So we're looking good there. So we've got what, 15 minutes, which gets us through our options here, and then preps us for quite a bit of hands-on stuff for the tomorrow sessions. Local view and solar system are probably where you're going to get a lot of work here. If you didn't know, there are sounds in Starry Night. If you turn them on, you can be in a meadow, or you can have some crickets in the background, or even a native flute, which I don't understand. So if you need to have a little bit of music while you're working, go on ahead and do that. Daylight is exactly what it says. You can turn daylight on and off. But your local horizon is really where you get to do a lot of the visual changes, especially during the daytime. So if you click on that, you're given a number of options. You can go with a flat horizon, which is exactly what it sounds like. It is just a flat horizon sky. You can have an animated one. In this case, it's sort of a moving grass field. Or what we would almost always be utilizing are the photorealistic horizons. So if you've had your side dome installed, almost certainly you've had someone come out and create a panorama for you, so that when you are in your dome and you go to your home location, it's almost always going to be the surrounding areas of your planetarium. And if you haven't had your side dome installed yet, or you're getting a new one, you probably get a new one as well. There are 3 locations where a horizon can be loaded. There's the document, there's the location, and then there's the default. The document is almost always going to be what you're using right now or a favorite. So if you click on document and you click on any of the panoramas that show up, this will only be here until you home your system or you create a favorite that allows you to recall what you see. So if you want, I will randomly choose the Sphinx in Egypt, then only in this document will that show up. So this is a great way for you to change out, to try new panoramas and to change them out quickly between favorites without risking that, like, all of a sudden you have changed the default for a location. So that's a good thing. So if I were to get rid of this and home the system, the document would go away. You can also set a location horizon. And in this case, you are saying that this location, Philadelphia, United States, will use the default Earth horizon, which is fine, except that the default Earth horizon of grass doesn't look like Philadelphia. So, funny thing, for a company that's based just outside of Philadelphia, there's a Philadelphia panorama. And if you select it, and I were to click OK, then the Philadelphia, for this point, the Philadelphia location would be using the Philadelphia horizon. We can set that in the location window or here in local horizon. And then let's just say you like everywhere on Earth to look exactly the same. You could then press default, which would then give you the ability to make any of your panoramas the default for anywhere on Earth that doesn't have its own panorama. So while Philly has one, Scranton may not. And so if you go to Scranton, it's going to default to the regular Earth horizon. But if you fly back to Philly, now it has the Philly horizon in there for it. So this is a chance, like if you get the ability to make panoramas Thursday afternoon, Scott's going to go over again how to make panoramas and stitch them together. This is a good opportunity if you have local sites that you'd like to have different horizon panoramas for. You can make them on a location by location basis, or just say
Detroit had one.
What's that?
Detroit had one, but it was deaccessioned because it wasn't very good.
It wasn't. Yeah, that wasn't.
We can do better.
We'll definitely do better from the top of an apartment building somewhere. You can also have clouds. It's up to you whether or not you'd like to use them, but you can see that there's you can have a thunderstorm or some cirrus clouds. This document does not override the clouds. During the day, the default clouds are cumulus. All right, that's fine. And if you don't want that, you can have no clouds, or you can have a thunderstorm. It's up to you if you want that sort of realism. You can also dim your horizon at night. So you can see here, we can go much darker so that you don't see it at all, or super bright because you want to show off your photography. It's up to you. Again, you have control over all of these different parameters. And then you have your cardinal points. My recommendation, and this is one of the few times where I will actually give you a hard and fast rule that everyone should follow forever. Do not make your cardinal points italicized, because when they're italicized, it doesn't look like they actually match up with south and north, and it really, really, really bothers me. So when you de-italicize them, when they're just the standard letters, they actually look like they're upright, like on south, south and north and east and west. It's a little thing, bothers the piss out of me. So just kind of keep that in mind. If you want your cardinal points to actually look like they're supposed to be, don't make them italicized. So until then, here we go. Great. Then a few other ones. You can turn on meteor showers if you'd like. Lots of fun stuff here. It will have meteor. Yes.
Before you go on quick, so if I want to set, if I want to create a panorama and set that location for every school that we go to in the county, I would go up to my location, change that location to Clear Spring or Williamsport or wherever, and then go in and load the horizon for that place. Is that correct?
You could do that
To save them all?
Or we can cut one of those steps out, make this easy on you. When we go to our viewing location window from the hamburger or from Philly, view from, you see that Philly has Philadelphia. It's a set panorama, the way we had with Stonehenge. But say, for example, I'm never going to go to, never going to go to Romania in the next year. That's fine. So you see when we cursor over default panorama, it transforms into set panorama. And if you click
Okay.
that, now you can choose, once you've selected Apollo 11 East Crater, anytime I go there,
Okay.
oh, because it's overriding. It shouldn't do that. Because I have a local document that's overriding here. But if you were to go home, there's Philly. Good. This is an excellent thing. And then I go to Romania, I'm actually on the moon. So I set that moon panorama for that specific location in Romania. And anytime I go there, I'm now on the moon. And you could do the
Okay.
same thing with all of those different places. Yeah, that's if you have the ability to do so, that really, really makes everything much more personable, because they're gonna go, I recognize that. Like, and all of a sudden now you've made that extra connection. So
Right. Okay.
the panoramas are a very strong way of showcasing that. Um, with your meteor showers, you can have meteor showers. You can have them either occasionally send a sporadic meteor during most of the year, and then it will have meteors that emerge from radiance for the major meteor showers. So you'll see Leonids, Geminids, Perseids, et cetera, et cetera. You can label the radiance if you'd like, and those sorts of things. So you can have a little bit of a meteor shower overlay if you're interested. And then depending on what you're using for cove lighting, or maybe you don't have cove lighting yet, or you just want to showcase how the sky changes with light pollution, there are two options: local and distant light pollution, that you can utilize to change the look of the sky to better match your own location. So local light pollution is what it sounds like. This would be sort of a general, um, uh, just say it's cutting off a few magnitudes from the bottom, but it's not going to introduce any light to the dome. So you can see that if you click on the option, you can go and get almost all of your stars back, or you can have, I don't know, downtown New York or something in Manhattan, and anywhere in between. So this is where you would set the baseline for your sky, and then you can add a distant light pollution, which is what gives you your light domes. So let's say, for example, you're living in, I can't think of that kind of stuff just yet. I can have a smaller city in the south, but I want it really more in the west, and I want it incredibly bright. Now I've created that light pollution dome. And if I want a small, tiny city in the northeast, southeast, because it's going to be opposite, little tiny dome of light. Now I've set, this is a terrible sky, by the way, but now you've set your light pollution domes to maybe more appropriately match, so that if you are in ATM4 or you have a favorite that allows you to change it, you can get rid of the distant light pollution and then have the local light pollution go off with it. So if you really want to like automate the sky going from light pollution to brilliantly dark, that's the means by which you would do so. By playing with those, you don't get into anything with the size of your stars or the brightness of your stars, which are usually set by the installer when you get your system in. So this way, you don't have to worry about messing up those very important preferences. You can now dictate how many stars are visible just by the light pollution. So a fun little addition to that if you're so interested. That brings us to 350. And most of what I think we're going to be doing tomorrow with the options is going to go hand in hand with a lot of what we're going to be talking about in sort of the hands-on stuff. So before we end this session, any other major questions? Anything we want to talk about for a bit? Right now we're going into an extended break. It's about a half hour. There's going to be an open networking room, and then it's new enhancements to Starry Night. So that's going to be an all together session. Emma, go ahead.
You said that my time issue will be resolved after I restart, correct?
Every time it's happened to me, it has been resolved by restarting.
Okay. It's just throwing me off today, but I didn't want to restart and waste time that we were doing in here.
Completely.
Indeed not, yeah.
Thank you.
I was curious if you had set up your location using the zip code.
I created my location using the zip code, and then from there I went in to file menu and set home location, and I set my home location using the location that I had made using the zip code. So maybe
Okay.
somewhere along that train, that's where it got a little messed up.
And is it on this computer that you're using now?
No, it's on, I have a separate computer.
Ah, okay. Maybe I could just do a quick screen share here.
Okay.
I'm going to go back.